Championship, Emery Winter in the studio. Tim Brando joins us, Fox Sports. And I was going to read this tweet before we had you on Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten. You actually spoke with him. Is that correct? Reminisced a little bit about the TV business and your knowledge of what he's done?
Yeah, we talked a little bit today. And I had been interviewed in a piece that Chris Vanini and Nicole Arbach collaborated on that was in The Athletic today. And he was just kind enough to call me and thank me for the kind words that I said about him. I had a wonderful experience working for him for 9 of the 18 years that I was at CBS. And I actually knew Tony long before that, too. He was a young attorney and then a young programmer at ABC when I was at ESPN in 1988. So he's 62. I've got him by about 5 years, but we basically came up in the same generation. And when the occasion occurred that he was elevated from the general manager position at WCBS in New York to our executive producer, which happened, I think, around 2005 or 6, somewhere right in there. He stayed for about, I think 8 years, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that at CBS. And he was our executive producer. So I saw him every Saturday that Spencer and I were in the studio, whether it was with Archie Manning or Tony Barnhart or, any of the other guys that followed, Aaron Taylor and a few other guys that would be our third wheel in the studio for the SEC on CBS. I saw him every week and talked to him a lot about college football. He was very, very involved, very active, had tremendous history with it, really wrote the BCS plan for Roy Kramer to take credit for. Even Commissioner Kramer gave him that credit every time someone interviewed him about it. And he knew that I was taking pot shots at the BCS from the moment it was created. And he understood my point of view. And I also understood that his point was we do need a playoff, but we cannot get there until we first and foremost get the Big Ten and the Pac-10 involved at that time. And away from this Rose Bowl thing that screwed it all up for everyone. We were having too many matchups that couldn't happen. And so this, in essence, had to happen. To get a 1 versus 2 had to happen first before we could ever, see a time and place for a full-fledged college football playoff, which ironically is inside 2 years of becoming a reality. And here he is becoming commissioner of the Big Ten after being out of the college football circle for quite a while. He left CBS to help put MLB Network on the air. He was also a big baseball guy, Tony. And then when he left that position, it was to be the associate commissioner of Major League Baseball. I frankly believe they would have been wise to have hired him as the commissioner rather than the assistant commissioner. But they did what they did. And I also tweeted years ago, when the Pac-12 job first came open, when Larry Scott got the job, I said they should hire Tony Petitti. So I have a strong record of support for Tony, and we got along famously. Sometimes management and talent relationships with management are somewhat, I think, at times strained a little because there are so many egos involved on the front side of the camera. I think a lot of times the suits that are in charge are hesitant to become too friendly with the people that are working on the air. And Tony was somewhat that way. He had a quiet hand and a quiet demeanor about him. But when we were in the studio on Saturdays, and he's the only executive, David, that I ever worked for that came in every Saturday. Most executives, people that run the department, they're always there on Sundays for the NFL, but they're not always there on Saturdays unless it's a mammoth game or a big weekend. Tony was not like that at all. He was a huge college football historian. And he and Mike Aresco were joined at the hip Mike was the vice president of programming for CBS for college sports, and Tony and he were they were side by side. And whenever Spencer and I got through with the pregame show and we watched the games on Saturday, we watched them together. We commented on what this or that win might mean for the conference and maybe even from a national standpoint. So he was wrapped up in the sport big time. And I really thought we lost our mojo a little bit with leadership as it related to college football, just the college game in particular, when Tony left. And it wasn't quite the same because on Saturdays it was just, we were having a blast in there and he was part of it. It wasn't like after the show was over, he would come have dinner and drinks with us. But while we were at work, man, he was involved. And I'm just really, really pleased that he's coming to the Big Ten because I know he's got a vision of where not just that conference is going, but also where college football as a whole needs to go. And because he's worked in so many different areas of leadership in athletics, both college and pro, and because he's been involved in TV, when we get to this point where we have a new television contract for the CFP, I think he's going to be just absolutely the perfect man to be really the point man for that deal to be done from the people that hold the rights. The college football playoff will be negotiated probably a little over a year from now. The negotiations will get going. The first year of the 12-team playoff will still be under ESPN's umbrella, but a new contract goes in place in 26. And I've said to you many times, I believe it'll be more than one network involved. And I think that Tony will be looking out for the best interest of not just the Big Ten, but everybody involved in college football with that new TV deal.
Tim, that kind of warms the cockles on my heart to hear you say that, because it does seem sometimes that the power brokers in each league kind of move straight forward in I've only got to do what's best for my league, and then they don't take a step back and go, well, what does this mean for the rest of it? And I'm not what Kevin Warren did for the Big Ten was unbelievable, but it was very the eye on the ball was them and no one else. And
right.
And to have a commissioner that would say okay, how do we all win here? I think is something college football really needs.
Yeah. Well, when you've done what he did with the BCS, and at the time he was still a very young programmer, at ABC when this happened. And he was working for people like Dennis Swanson and Roone Arledge. The biggest names in college athletics at that time were all at ABC Sports. And, he absolutely was in awe of Keith Jackson, and was around Keith quite a bit. And in fact, tried when he was at CBS. Here's a little nugget for you that you may not realize. When Vern Lundquist got the job to be the voice of the SEC on CBS, it happened only because Keith Jackson was being wooed big time by CBS, and Tony was the lead man for that. Everyone thought that Keith was done around 98 or 99, and he did not want to leave, but it looked as if he was being shown the door by the management there at that time. And I think CBS caught wind of that, and they tried really hard to get him to come over to be the voice of the SEC on CBS. But another gentleman took over as the head of ABC Sports at that time, and it was about to come to an end. ESPN being purchased by Disney, Cap City selling its holdings to the Disney Corporation. And Howard Katz came in, and Howard was very close to those guys, and he was able to get them convince Keith to stay, that they wanted him to come back, and so that his run of doing all those Rose Bowls could continue. And Keith was getting up in years and wanted to stay closer to home, so ultimately he said no to Petitti and Sean McManus, but they really wanted to get him. And imagine what would have happened if that had actually occurred,
Oh yeah.
But for Vern, who who was being replaced by Dick Enberg on the NFL, for Vern, it meant the opportunity to do the SEC on CBS. And I think everyone believes, and even Vern would admit probably, it extended his career by at least a decade, maybe more, getting that job. Leaving the NFL number 2 position for the SEC on CBS was a great thing for his career. And I think a lot of guys in his position, and even Vern at the time, didn't think so. That he had really become comfortable and loved being the second guy on the NFL. But again, it goes back down to that deep and abiding love of the sport and what would the fans really want to see. And I think that's the way Tony Petitti is cut. He knows what the fans want. He has a unique understanding of what the game really needs. And, I think without question, I mean, he's not going to come in and say, okay, we're going to do this. He doesn't govern that way. He's one of those guys, David, the smartest guys always come into the room and they don't come in too loud because they don't need to be loud. People know how smart they are. So they eventually come to them. And after he hears what everyone else has to say, he'll say, well, what about this? And the what about this is usually the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That's the kind of leader he is.
Do you think his relationship with Aresco will help any with what Mike Aresco wants and those who are considered the non-Power 5 conferences?
Yeah, I do. I think so. And I think the relationship, they're very similar in the sense that they were both considered outliers that were hired to be commissioners of conferences. He did not have a career in college athletics like Greg Sankey, by example, had, or Bob Bowlesby when he was at the Big 12 had, or John Swofford when he was at the ACC had. These guys are first and foremost television people. That's how they were raised into the business as programmers, knowing what games needed to be played when. But at the same time, you've got to have relationships with those people you're dealing with at all those schools. And trust me, that's what happens here. These last, week and a half to 2 weeks, he's been on a tour of Big Ten presidents, just as Mike Aresco was on a tour of Big East presidents. And Mike knew what he was going to have to do eventually was a lot more of the legalese. He was going to have to get a deal done where the Big East basketball schools would be paying for the rights, the league, Big East, and to pay for the right to make sure that they got the tournament at Madison Square Garden, which they were contracted to have by holding onto the title. Well, all those schools in the American Conference that were Big East schools that had football, they reaped the benefit financially of this payout that came from those schools that were only going to do basketball. And, you got to know your stuff when you're doing that. None of that is any, those were big hurdles that Mike had to deal with when he took that job, originally with the Big East Conference. No such problem for the Big Ten. I mean, these are the most established schools and powerhouse schools with the largest alumni bases in all of sport. And it's easily the highest rated television football that we have in the college game. So I think in a lot of ways, with the TV deal done for the Big Ten, which it is for the next 7 years, he can, and I believe he will ultimately do a lot for the game globally. That he'll be able to talk with, and maybe I think he'll be really well received by the other commissioners. I think Yormark and Kliavkoff, if the Pac-12 is still in business. Certainly Jim Phillips knows Tony Petitti really well with the ACC. I think he'll have their ears in a way that certainly Kevin Warren did not. And that's important, because the Big Ten and the SEC are the two conferences, and those two men are in the best positions. And I think there's a similarity really between Petitti and Sankey in their demeanor and in the way they do business. Both cut right to the chase. Neither one are self-promoters. But I think both are magnificent leaders. And as they develop a relationship as well, I think it bodes well for all those conferences, the Mid-America Conference, the Sun Belt, certainly the Mountain West, and also Mike's conference, which has been really the next best conference since really the college football playoff got underway. And now they're being challenged a little bit by the Sun Belt now because of overall talent and what's happened with the poaching of so many great programs that he had into the Big 12, by example. But the bottom line is having all of Division I college football, I'll use the cliche, on the same page is really what the college game needs. We need to stop with the labeling of this is the big conference and this is the little conference. This is the group of, and that is the power group. We need to get rid of all of that. And I would say Aresco's statements resonated in a lot of ways to a lot of the other conference commissioners. And I'm pretty sure that Tony feels as Mike does about that.
Tim Brando with us on 365 Sports. Paul?
Tim, do you think it was important to the Big Ten to get someone who was more widely trusted than maybe Kevin Warren?
Yes, I think it's important that the Big Ten have someone that's not going to leave to become a president of an NFL franchise. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This should be a destination location. And I really believe that it is. You know, I had someone tweet me today saying, well, is he getting ready to become commissioner of baseball? And my response was just my opinion, but I really believe it. MLB had their chance to hire him. They didn't do it. They went with Rob Manfred. He could have very easily been. And what professional sport needs more help in television than Major League Baseball? You know, think about that. I think he would have made a great commissioner for baseball. And I thought the Pac-12 should have hired him too, as I mentioned. And I think they'd be in a better place had they done that. It's just amazing how the general population and general public, even some young people in the media, did not have an understanding about who Tony Petitti was. You know, when it was first announced, I got, oh my God, another outlier. Oh my God, this is another guy from outside college athletics. How many more of these are we going to have? And I'm like, well, if you knew him like I know him, you would know that this guy's a lot more inside than outside when it comes to the history and currency of college football. I mean, he really has. You can be in a different area of business, be an entrepreneur as he was. You know, when he left MLB Network, he took over a content company that was streaming, was in the gaming industry, as well as his company Blizzard, which was being run at one time by Steve Bornstein, my old boss at ESPN, and who took over television negotiations for the NFL after he left there. Tony took that position and grew that business. And he had another one, a streaming content company that was working on prior to this announcement going to the Big Ten. So the future of television content and where we're going with streaming and all that, he's way ahead of the curve in that area. And fellas, in today's world, that's where colleges need to, that's where they're going to make their future money. It's going to be in that area. And again, these are all areas that he's been involved in, as well as the TV business.
Tim, obviously that's what Kleofkoff and the Pac-12 are hoping, that Amazon, Apple, whatever, come up with a nice chunk. They would obviously still want to be a part of linear and hope it's more than 50%. Whatever happens, they've kicked the can down the road again a little bit again. But could they actually be ahead of the curve? Not that they don't want to be on Fox or ESPN. Everyone does. But are they almost ahead of the curve on this, not all, but a large chunk of it streaming, almost forced into that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's too soon. I think it's too soon to be, thinking about it. It's really kind of concerned me when, what was it, about a month ago, the Arizona president proclaimed that they would have a deal within the week or 2 weeks, and that it would be larger than the Big 12 deal. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, wow, that's confidence. So I thought there was really something there. I think a lot of other people in the media did. And it turned out that they were nowhere near having a deal with either Amazon or Apple. And in order to get that linear network that you want on the hook, you got to have some leverage. And at this stage, the Pac-12 is still without that word. They don't have any leverage right now, and they won't get it until they find at least one of the two entities that they want to do business with. I've heard and I've read where some people in the business have indicated that at this stage they're so behind the other conferences, the Big 12 especially. Maybe it would be better for them to stand pat and get through and start maybe this season before they really get serious, because at that point, maybe, just maybe, some of those carriers that they're trying to get interest from, by example, ESPN lost all of its Big Ten programming. That was a lot of programming that they had. Fox had the main game, yes, but a good bit of their programming was Big Ten football. Well, when they got the Big 12 thing done and they got sort of a 60-40 deal on the Big 12 to carry the A package, Fox is not far behind it in terms of the money they're paying, but it is the secondary package. The Pac-12 is in a bit of a pickle. Fox is carrying Mountain West games in that time slot, so it's not like they don't have people to take care of. And ESPN, even without the Big Ten, still is the high-volume dealer in all of college football. They still have more conferences and more deals to be done. So, the longer they wait, the further this goes along without an announcement from either Apple or Amazon about how much money they're going to pay the Pac-12, I think that, and again, this is just my opinion. I'm not paid to give these. I have no contact whatsoever with our people that are in the procurement of rights for college football. But I think it's reasonable to assume that if the deal is not made soon with either one of those streaming companies, then either the folks in Bristol or the company I work for could be in a good position to still have the Pac-12, but not for nearly the amount of money that the Pac-12 would want. That's my thought.
Tim Brando with us, Fox Sports on 365 Sports. I remember a few weeks ago, and it might have been watching the PGA Tour event at Pebble Beach or Torrey Pines, and I saw where Max Homa was walking from the tee box down the fairway with a pair of earbuds and carrying on a conversation, and we saw that at Augusta National. Yeah. Tim, I never thought I would ever see that, but I love the idea.
Yeah, and but leave it to a few scribes that are out there that write about television sports. They don't broadcast it. They've been screaming for more access. But all of a sudden, Justin Thomas does one of those, and he goes bogey, double bogey, double bogey to make sure the players now know, hey, man, maybe you weren't as focused as you should have been. That's so serendipitous to the point. Those guys were all asked. And I thought it was interesting. I did not think this. I would have thought that it was the CBS production people that did the asking, but it was the Green Jackets. This was something that the people in charge of the Masters, Ridley and those guys, asked the players to do. They'd already done it on some PGA events, as you mentioned, the one with Homa, and they agreed to do it. I can't say enough about Rory McIlroy as a leader for the PGA. As a matter of fact, they did him on Thursday, so it was day one of the Masters when they interviewed him, and he was kind of hanging around at that point, around even par. Mm-hmm. He wound up not making the cut the next day. Homa was hovering around even par, maybe one under. He actually played pretty well after that, did make the cut, and did finish the Masters, but yeah, access is what everyone wants. And, the Champions Tour has been doing this for probably 3 or 4 years. Now, not as many people watch the Champions Tour. And those guys are more relaxed. They've already made a lot of money. They're playing more for fun and pure joy than anything else. But to do it at a major like that, maybe the premier major, was magnificent. I thought it was tremendous. I was a little critical of some of what I saw on Sunday as it related to the lack of coverage of Phil Mickelson, particularly not having an interview with him post round when he shot what he did, 16 greens and shot 65. In the past, when he wasn't wearing a live outfit, he would have been interviewed the moment he stepped off the 18th green.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen this time. And I was curious as to why. If CBS asked him and he chose to decline, that's understandable. But normally, when that happens, Jim Nantz is quick to point out we asked to speak with Phil. He politely declined. I didn't hear him say that, and I thought I was watching pretty closely. But word is that may have been the case. Just as Phil didn't want to talk at the Champions dinner on Tuesday night, maybe he didn't want to talk after his round either. He was trying to keep it just about the Masters, keep it about golf. And I thought he and Brooks Koepka and really their playing partners did a great job of handling that well. I think a lot of people thought there might be more fireworks. Those guys, I thought, were very congenial and handled themselves with the kind of class and dignity that we're accustomed to placing on the sport of golf.
Yeah, I think time, space has allowed that thing to cool down a little bit. Some of the sniping is not quite the same. Let me ask you this. I thought Brooks Koepka was incredibly did you ever watch the Full Swing, the mini series?
I watched all of it. I watched all of it.
Brooks Koepka looked like a mess, and he admitted it. I mean, he was lost.
Yeah.
But I thought in the press conference, perhaps Thursday after he shot 67, I think it was, or 67, that he was asked the question, if you thought that you were going to get back to this level of play, would you have left for LIV? And he said, probably not. Because he never thought he was going to be healthy again. But he also again said, he goes, I don't regret my decision. But I thought that was very transparent. And I think he might have come out of this a lot better than when where he was 3 or 4 months ago as far as the public.
Absolutely. Look, Mickelson is the lightning rod that's playing. And certainly Greg Norman is the real big lightning rod that's not playing. And a lot was made of maybe what Greg said about, having a party at the 19th hole and whatnot. And then he was respectfully asked not to show up by the Green Jackets. And then Phil did come in and he did have a very quiet, sometimes even I would say awkward demeanor for Phil, for those of us that know him. But he wore the suit, man. He had that outfit on, and he was going to get LIV Golf some exposure by doing that. But my God, what an incredible round! Like I'm saying, other than the winner, other than what was done to win that golf tournament by Jon Rahm, who I really thought had the best chance among the big three coming in to win it because his swing is so good, so compact, and yet so powerful and strong. If he gets the putter going, he is the best player in the world, in my opinion, right now. But beyond that story, fellas, I thought Phil Mickelson was definitely the story on Sunday. And I just thought they did not cover him. Now Jim Nantz went out of his way over and over again to talk about the history he was making, both at being 53 and shooting that low of a score on the final day, the best score he's ever had, and all the stops that he's made at Augusta as a three-time champion. But I thought from the standpoint of supporting that with where Mickelson ranks, we're just a couple of years removed, from him being the PGA champion.
Yep.
The oldest ever at plus 50.
And maybe, the peak of his popularity right at that point, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he's gone through all of this with LIV and put himself on the line. I thought there was a lot of pressure on him to perform at this Masters because he had been horrible on the LIV Tour. His numbers were terrible. His statistics were bad. I mean, he looked great. He's lost a lot of weight. I know that new coffee that he's taking. I might have to take a look at that.
Yeah.
that coffee that he's drinking. But I thought if he had gone out in 2 rounds shooting 75 and 76, I mean, he would have been probably as embarrassed as maybe he's ever been in recent memory. And then he goes out and lights it up, to shoot 65 and hit 16 greens in regulation. I mean, even when Phil was winning tournament after tournament and really rivaling Tiger, he wasn't known for hitting fairways and greens.
No.
He was getting up and down around greens, getting out of trouble. The shot of his life from the straw on 15. I mean, my God, those were his epic moments. It wasn't about fairways and greens. So this was just a different Phil Mickelson in terms of the way he performed on the weekend. I thought I saw 71 and, now he makes the cut, but he's right there. Did I think he was going to finish second on Sunday? Absolutely not. Under no circumstances did I feel that he would finish second. So to me, and by the way, the number of seconds that he's had at Augusta, I think it's only Nicklaus that's better than him on finishing second there. I just thought he was worthy of more. Nance did everything he could, I thought, to remind people of what Mickelson was doing, but they were not showing his run on the back nine when he was going birdie, birdie, birdie. They were not cutting the shots with him. I just thought that their coverage lacked from the standpoint of following a big name. Just because that big name is no longer on the PGA Tour doesn't mean you don't have to. You got to follow that story. You just do.
Yeah, you do.
Opinion.
I agree. Tim, thank you very much. It's about that time you work on your golf game, and it's beautiful weather, and
you
get out, get some sun. And is this a downtime for you? Is this when you have some freedom to kind of decompress?
Yeah. You haven't mentioned it yet, but since I spoke to you, and this happened right before I got to the Final Four, how long has it been since we talked? I'm trying to remember. Did we talk 2 weeks ago?
It was,
we did.
It was 2 weeks. It was right before the Final Four weekend.
Okay, well then this was as early as my contract's ever been renewed at Fox.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have all this time off before I start my new deal, which begins in September, is really cool. Normally we're grinding about every 2 years to figure out whether it's over or not, and to know for the next 4 months and 3 years that I'm going to continue to do what I love. I couldn't be more excited. I'm going to spend some time, obviously, chasing grandbabies and more time than usual playing some golf in the next few months. But I am working on that book that I'm talking about doing, and when I get to 2025, which is a couple of years or more away, I hope to have the book ready, and I'm going to really get down and dirty on that in the next, at least for about a month of these next 4 months that I've got off, and really get the manuscript started, so to speak.
Yep.
I've been doing a lot of research going back and finding old clippings. I hoard stuff. I've been going through that. But the guys that are helping me with the book, the writers, are going to, begin talking to me, interviewing me, going over things. And but that'll be the 40th anniversary of my my national television career. And at that point, I think is a good time to get the book out. Maybe it'll help some young kids and bring back a lot of memories to people our age and older, David.
Tim, we appreciate you all the time, and you're a great storyteller. We appreciate you. We'll have you on sometime during this hiatus, and thanks for your time as always. We appreciate you.
Always happy to talk to you guys. You know that.
Yes, sir. You too. Tim Brando, Fox Sports, with us on many things from